Teddy Atlas is getting involved in MMA. Now, I don't know if that's totally new as much as it is a new addition and people are covered. I mean, Teddy has always been one of these guys who's worked with whoever wants to work with him. Somebody goes and asks Teddy Atlas for help, somebody's going to get the help of Teddy Atlas. But Teddy's a little bit more out there now. He's got a podcast. He's out there talking. He just waited on a piece. Footage broke. Teddy at the UFC gym in Las Vegas working with Francis Ngannou. They're working on this uppercut. Working on the uppercut. So then Teddy's been covering a little bit of MMA, and a lot of the boxing people pushed back. And they looked at it as though Teddy was doing something wrong, that he was betraying. This is the word that Teddy used when Teddy was defending himself, that he's betraying boxing, the sport he's loved his entire life. And Teddy goes, you're not wrong. I'm not betraying it, but you're not wrong that I am shifting a lot of my focus to MMA. And Teddy said it like this. He goes, I'm a weatherman. I'm here to report the news. And I got to tell you, in boxing, it's been rainy lately. And it's not fun for me to report the rain. So this is the analogy he gives, but I do understand what he's talking about, right? There's just not a lot of big things that go on in boxing. Boxing is a mess compared to where it needs to be. Boxing's in a fine spot. I come from the sport of wrestling. We're in a fine spot. We're not growing and we're not heading anywhere as wrestling, but we also don't even have the vision or the attempt to go anywhere. Boxing is the same way within its leadership. It is a mess. The fact that they're out there for 12 rounds is painfully boring. Teddy called it a sparring session. Boxing is lining up a lot of sparring sessions. UFC is lining up a whole bunch of fights. I want to see the fights. Boxing inherently has a number of problems. Starting with the rounds, right? Now, I'm the only guy you're going to hear complain about the rounds. But I am 100% right. The reason that sport is so god darn boring to watch is you got to watch 36 minutes of it. That's painful. It's painfully boring to have to put up with. The whole idea that people love stoppages, even within the sport of MMA, is not because people love to see someone get knocked out or see them get their arm extended. They don't want to have to sit and watch the whole match. We're guilty of it too. We just encourage stoppages. That is our way of dealing with the mistake in the unified rules that puts those guys out there for that long of time. It is a spectator sport in that order. Is the reason they don't call it sport spectator. They call it spectator sport in that order. And our sport also, if we did not encourage so much the stoppage of one of these matches to not go the damn duration, we wouldn't suffer the same fate as boxing, but we would be going down that road. So then you talk about the sparring sessions and the mismatches. Boxing inherently, and they made a mistake, culturally speaking, and they made it 100 years ago. They made it unacceptable to lose. One of the biggest differences in the ability or the inability to promote boxing versus the ability or inability to promote MMA is MMA does not reflect on a guy's overall record. It reflects on what is a match that is interesting for tonight, what is going to happen tonight. Oh, and by the way, just so everybody understands why these guys' records are blemished, because we're putting the best against the best at all time. We do not focus on the record, and therefore there is no incentive to athlete/manager to team up to go get 20 tomato cans at a local bar and a smoker so he can draw into a WBA or an IBF world title fight if we can just put 20-0 on the poster next to his face. There is no incentive for that, but there is also nothing hidden about it. There is nothing shameful about getting beat, going out and competing in your sport against the best while trying your best to not get beat. That is a story that MMA has told from the beginning, and it also draws a significant difference, and it's going to stop boxing. Boxing's not in a wonderful place. I mean, they're starting to have to do celebrity boxing. They're starting to have to do silly things to get people to come and watch, which in all fairness works for me. I'd rather see one of the Paul boys box almost more than I want to see anybody else box. I don't give a damn who Canelo's next fight is unless it's Triple G. I don't care who Triple G's next fight is unless it's Canelo. These are the top guys. Tyson Fury is going to work on his own. Tyson Fury brings something else to the table. Deontay Wilder in many ways brings the same thing. The fact that they're fighting each other, okay, great. What else do you have to look forward to in boxing? I mean, in all fairness, they've never really done a great job of telling stories. That's another thing. Boxing inherently has always been main event heavy only. You focus on the main event. That's a fine way to go out and do business. It's not a fine way to go out and build multiple stars. You could have a star somewhere else on your card, but you didn't put any time or marketing or money or PR into him. He's now not a star. He's just a good boxer who happens to be on a card. It's total different, right? You look at what Bellator does or what the UFC does, they will use every single Saturday night to build 10 guys. And they're going to place the card, a little more emphasis on the main event, and then, it slides down to the co-main event, and then it slides down the whole card. But 10 guys are going to get shine. 10 guys are going to get the rub. Every single week, 10 guys are going to get featured. It's just different than what boxing does, where it just goes main event heavy. Just one of these things, but it's one of these differences. And for Teddy Atlas to point out that, hey, I'm enjoying what these MMA guys are doing. And it also surprised me that Teddy had to defend himself in some ways. Teddy is the foremost authority, the most respected voice in America in boxing, period. Teddy is the only man to stand up to USA Boxing in conjunction with the IOC at the Olympic Games for the corruption that they do to the sport. He is the only one. Now, 3 referees in boxing were removed by security at the Rio Games as recently as 2016 because of corruption. One of which was caught on a camera by the NBC cameras that happened to be running as one of the coaches, I believe it was the Cuban coach, paid the referee a sum of $10,000 in an envelope, which got caught and they went and grabbed and seized. Boxing is dirty and filthy and corrupt. Teddy is one of the only guys to call it out. I say that to you as a guy who loves boxing. Boxing would go down as my second favorite sport. I will just share with you, we are more than happy as an MMA community to have Teddy. We were thrilled to have Freddie Roach. We are thrilled when Roger Mayweather used to start to work with some guys. That's a really cool thing for us because we also recognize the positives to boxing. Boxing started everything, including training camps. You never heard the term training camp. I mean, it was a kind of a new thing when a few MMA guys started to make enough money they could go put a camp together and go away and isolate and train and try to do like what they read about that Sugar Ray Leonard and Muhammad Ali were doing, but they were just trying to replicate boxing because they respected them. Just by example. So we were so happy to have the Teddy Atlases of the world come over. I was a little surprised when boxing resisted him going over. It seems like there's room for all. And I do remember an early time in the sport of MMA, a very early time where we thought we are going to have to fight, that the pro wrestling fans are going to be on this side of the room, boxing fans on this side of the room, MMA guys on this side of the room. We're going to have to fight. This is Ford and Chevy. This is Coke and Pepsi. But what we found out, surprisingly, is that just wasn't the case. We're just willing to all move around. MMA fans, we watch boxing all the time. MMA fan will watch pro wrestling sometime. Wrestling fan will enjoy it all. We found out that we share the same fan base. I offer that because it is a little bit surprising that anybody at this day and age is pushing back on Teddy Atlas, who, in many ways, I mean, the guy's a treasure. Truly is. And if a young aspiring athlete came out and asked this treasure for help, and Teddy closed the book on him and said, no, unless you're wearing 16-ounce gloves, absolutely not. It'd be a very rude thing to do. Teddy did a nice thing. You saw how excited Ngannou was to be in there, learning some of the sweet science from it's a very exciting thing. MMA's thrilled to have Teddy. I wish that boxing would reconsider this. Boxing should consider the niceness in somebody with Teddy's knowledge being willing to share it with somebody else who wants to learn.